Greetings from EPG Pathshala. In this module, I am going to talk about random number generation. We have seen up till now different cryptographic algorithms. To remind you of a public key cryptography RSA algorithm, we started with the first step, that was generate a prime number. Generate a random number, and that random number should be prime. So in cryptography, we are widely using the random numbers and prime numbers. My focal point would be how to generate the random numbers and how to find out that this number is a prime or not. To find out whether the number is prime or not, we have a well-defined algorithm called Rabin-Miller algorithm. I would be teaching you it in detail, how that algorithm works. At the same time, we are going to differentiate between deterministic algorithm and probabilistic algorithm. So first step in my discussion is random numbers. Where they are used in cryptography, we can use them as a nonces in authentication protocols to prevent replay attack. Meaning that we have seen that when A and B starts communication, they first exchange a random nonce, that is a random number. A sends a random number to B, and B in turn sends the same random number back to A, and new random number it has generated to A. A also replies with the random number sent by B, and that way they finishes the handshake protocol and saying that both are ready for the communication. The second is random numbers are used as a session key. When we generate a session key, it's a random number. You all are using OTP as well, one-time password. It is nothing but a randomly generated number that comes to your mobile or your laptop that you have to feed to certain websites to complete your transaction. Here I am talking about session key. Session key is useful when you are having a web sessions. So session key keeps a track that in this session what you did, what all transactions you did. So in case any malicious activity is being performed, it can show that this was the session key. The third is public key generation. As I started my discussion with RSA algorithm, they already discussed, they start with two prime numbers, those are the randomly generated. And fourth is key stream for a one-time pad. That also I explained that in many transactions you are using this one-time password. Can I have any number, any series, I can say it is a random, saying that 1, 5, 7 or 9, then I can take 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So if I talk about 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, what it says, they are all at a distance of 2. So they are dependent on the previous value, they are not independent. So they are not truly random. The second property for the randomness is uniform distribution. Uniform distribution says if we think of generating a random number in the range of 1 to 1024, then if my algorithm is always generating a number that is in the range of 1 to 512, then it is not a right algorithm, because it is always generating a number within a specified range. But the property says it should be uniformly distributed, so it should cover the whole range. The first random number generator is PRNGs, that is called pseudo random number generators. If algorithm for random number generation is good, the resulting sequences will pass the test of randomness. 2 points to emphasize: even if you use any random number algorithm and random numbers are generated, they should follow two properties: uniform distribution and independence. So we were to the discussion of pseudo random number generators. I said random number algorithm for random number generation is good, then the resulting sequence will pass the randomness, and such numbers are called pseudo-random numbers. How does pseudo-random number generators proceed? We have to feed a seed. Seed means from which number you want to start generating the random numbers. It is a deterministic algorithm. Deterministic algorithm means it has a specific equations. It generates a pseudo-random bit stream. Then we have TRNGs, true random number generations. They are the source of true randomness, saying that entropy source is used. They are converted to the binary number and random bit stream is generated. The next is PRFS, pseudo random function. It needs seed, context specific values. They are also deterministic algorithm, and pseudo random bit stream is generated. So three things we have discussed: pseudo random number generators, true random number generation, and pseudo random function. First we would talk about PRNG requirement, that is pseudo random number generator requirement. The first is randomness. Three characteristics for randomness: uniformity, scalability, and consistency. Uniformity, the numbers should cover the whole range. They should be uniformly distributed. It should not happen that always a number between 1 to 10 is generated. Scalability and consistency. The second is unpredictability. Say that they cover forward unpredictability and backward unpredictability. Forward unpredictability says that given number, one should not be able to determine what will be the next number. Backward unpredictability says given a number, one should not be able to determine what all numbers would have been generated up till now. We'll start with a pseudo-random number generator. It goes with the equation xn plus 1 equal to a of xn plus c, and whole should go through the modulo m operation. M is the modulus and always should be greater than 0. A is the multiplier and a should be between 0 and m. 0 less than a less than m. So multiplier cannot be 0, multiplier cannot have a value equal to m. It should always be in the range of it. C is the increment that we want to follow. 0 less than or equal to C less than m. X0 is the starting value. We will call it seed. That seed is always in the range of 0 to 0 inclusive and less than m. So seed you can feed as 0, but it should not be equal to m. This equation would generate any value that is in the range of 0, inclusive and less than m. So 0 less than or equal to xn less than m. For example, if we are using pseudo-random number generator, example values we have shown is a equal to c equal to 1. So what would happen in this case? Always the new number will be equal to the previous number plus 1. So if I am using a and c both equal to 1, what would happen? If my xn, that is current value, is 12, the next value would be 13, next value would be 14, next value would be 15, and so on. So that does not meet our criteria of unpredictability, because given a number, one can always predict that what would be the next number. Suppose we try another value saying a equal to 7, c equal to 0, m equal to 32. The seed we are going to feed is x0, that is 1. It would generate a values 7, 17, 23, 1, 7, 17, 23, 1, 7, 17, 23. Observation: it generates 7, 17, 23 and 1, and then the values get repeated. So it does not even have the properties satisfied. If you take a value of m that is modulus of the order 2 raised to 31, then potentially a long series of distinct random numbers can be produced. So modulo should be a greater value. We looked at the pseudo-random number generators. Now we want to look at another algorithm, that is that's a Blum-Shub generator. It's a cryptographically secure pseudo-random bit generator, saying that cryptographically secure, that means cryptographic attacks cannot occur on them. This Blum-Shub generator is based on the public key algorithm. It uses least significant bit from iterative equation, meaning that if the equation is generating n number of bits, it would take only least significant bit out of that. Rest of the bits would not be used. The equation goes like this: xi equal to xi minus 1 square mod n. That is the equation we will use for this generator. N is nothing but p into q, and for p into q we have a special condition saying that they should be prime and p should be congruent to 3 mod 4 and q should be congruent to 3 mod 4. For example, if I take p to be 15, then the idea is I cannot take p to be 15 because first condition is p should be prime. So take an example of a prime number saying that 17. Can I take 17? So the 17 is a prime, but the next condition is p should be congruent to 3 mod 4. If I say 17 mod 4, it generates 1. So again the condition is not satisfied. Going ahead with another value, if we can find out p to be n, let's try a value 19. 19 is a prime number. If I do 19 mod 4, it would end up in a 3. So yes, this time both the criterias are met. It is prime as well as it is congruent to 3 mod 4. So we can take 19 as a p. Same way, you have to find out a value of q that satisfies both the properties prime and congruent to 3 mod 4. When we say it is a cryptographically secure, we say it is the next bit is unpredictable, so it passes the next bit test. The security of this algorithm is based on the difficulty of factoring n, because whatever n we took is a p into q, so we should not be able to factor n, otherwise we would be able to guess what is p and what is q. Algorithm output is unpredictable even if given any number of bits, but the algorithm is slow since very large numbers must be used. Even we go ahead, it is too slow to use for cipher use, only it is good for key generation. For you, the example is on the board. We have taken n to be 192649, a large number which is multiplication of 383 and 503. We have fed a seed to be 101355. We are given the value of I says the iteration, what would be the value of xi and what the bit we are going to generate. So initially 0, we got xi to be 20749. It would say in the ith iteration 1 we are going to generate 143135, and 2 in the second iteration the xi value would be 177671. In the third iteration it would be 97048. It would generate bi in the first iteration to be 1, second iteration 1, third iteration 0. This way we will keep on generating the bits up to the length which we need. Now we want to talk about Fermat's theorem. Fermat's theorem says a raised to p minus 1 is equal to 1 mod p. Fermat's theorem says when you use p should be prime, and when you use a and p should be relatively prime. That means their greatest common divisor should be 1. Going ahead with the Fermat's algorithm, Fermat's theorem, it says if we do a raised to p, it will end up in p mod p. That means if I do a raised to p mod p, we would end up in p itself, provided p is prime and a and p are relatively prime, meaning that their greatest common divisor is 1. Fermat's theorem is useful in public key and primality testing. Further, go ahead with the Rabin-Miller algorithm for deciding that whether a number is prime or not. We are going to use this property. We will go ahead with Euler's theorem. It is a generalization of Fermat's theorem. Says if I do a raised to totient function n, that would result in 1 if the modulo n operation is performed. A and n are given such that their greatest common divisor is 1, meaning that a and n are relatively prime. Totient function is already clear to you. We are given value of a to be 3, n to be 10. Our totient function would be 4. Hence, what we need to prove, 3 raised to 4 is equal to 81, and that is, if we go ahead with modulo 10, it would result in 1. Another example is a equal to 2, n equal to 11. The totient function of 11 is equal to 10. And then we have to do a raised to totient function, that is 2 raised to 10, that results in 1024. If we take a modulo 11, it would result in 1. So by example, we have proved that the Euler's theorem works properly. We are going ahead with a primality testing. What is the conventional approach? Divide all numbers to start with. If given number is prime number or not, what is the conventional approach? Divide all numbers in turn, that is less than the square root of the given number. And if a given number is divisible by any of the number, that is less than or equal to square root of that number starting with 2, then we will say that the number is prime. We are not dealing with 0 and 1, because you know, if I divide any number by 0, it goes to infinity, and if I divide any number by 1, then it is always going to be divisible. So we are going to start with 2 and we are going up to square root of that number. But this type of conventional algorithm can only work for small numbers. Think about a large number of the range 2 raised to 512 or 2 raised to 1024, then trying out all the numbers less than or equal to square root of that number makes the thing very time consuming. So we are going to, alternatively, we can use the statistical primality test based on the properties of prime, for which all prime numbers satisfy the property and some composite number also satisfy the property. So if it is a prime number, algorithm say may be prime, but if it is a composite number, then it is going to definitely say that this is a composite number, meaning that this is a probabilistic algorithm. So if applying this algorithm, you cannot be 100% sure that the number is prime. Then why we are using this algorithm? We are using this algorithm to have a primality testing for the large number and to prove our point to the solid point. What we'll do, we'll repeat this algorithm for number of numbers, means many numbers, or at least 3-4 iterations, and then if the number is proved to be prime, then we will be sure that the number is prime. This algorithm is said to be the Miller-Rabin algorithm. It is based on the Fermat's theorem. We will start the algorithm by feeding n. N is the number whose primality we want to check. The first step is find the integers k and q. K is always greater than 0 and q is odd, so that n minus 1 ends up in 2 raised to k into q. Just to quickly point out what is k and q, if I am talking about 13, n to be 13, so n minus 1 would be 12. If I factorize them, factorize 12, it would be 2 into 2 into 3. So 2 square into 3. If I do the analogy of it with 2 raised to k into q, k would be 2 and q would be 3. Clear with the term k and q. Go ahead with the second step, that is select a random integer a. That random number be always be in the range of 1 less than a less than n minus 1. So a would start from 2 and it can go up to n minus 1. The third step says you have to perform a raised to q mod n. If it comes out to be 1, then we say number may be prime. We are not sure, we cannot say 100% the number is prime, but may be prime. If that third step fails, we will go ahead with the fourth step for j equal to 0 to k minus 1. You know what is the value of k, we defined it in the first step. You need to repeat the steps from 0 to k minus 1. This time check the condition a raised to 2 raised to j q mod n. If it gives n minus 1, then again we will announce that the number may be prime. If neither the condition in step number 3, neither the condition in step number 4 and 5 are satisfied, we will return that the number is composite. Just to verify our point, check the algorithm. If it is a prime number, it announces that may be prime, and if it is a composite number, it announces that number is really a composite number. We will be applying this Rabin-Miller algorithm to understand. We start with n equal to 29. So clear, we want to test that whether the 29 is prime or not. N minus 1 would be 28. We can rewrite it as 2 raised to 2 into 7. Do the analogy with 2 raised to k into q. So k would be 2 and q would be 7. Now the algorithm says take the value of a to be in the range of 1 to n minus 1. Suppose we took a to be 10. Go ahead with the step number 3. We need to test whether the a raised to q, in our case 10 raised to 7 mod 29, what is the result? It gives 17. So it is not a 1, not 28. Algorithm says if it comes out to be 1, then we can say that may be prime. So our third step fails, but we will go ahead with 10 raised to 7 square. So now we are repeating, we are going in the loop in the step 4 and 5. They say you start with j equal to 0. So first we have to do is a raised to 2q. So 10 raised to 7 and 2q says 10 raised to 7 raised to square. Perform modulo 29 operation. It comes out to be 28. 28, that satisfies our property of a raised to 2jq mod n to be n minus 1. So we will return that 29 may be prime. As I said, you cannot be sure whether the number is prime or not. So repeat this algorithm with one more a value. Take a value to be 2. This time you do 2 raised to 7 mod 29. It comes out to be 12. It is neither 1 nor 28. So step 3 fails. Go ahead for step 4 and step 5. Do 2 raised to 14 mod 29. It comes out to be 28, that is n minus 1. So once again we are announcing that 29 may be prime. So we repeated our algorithm with value of 10 and value of 2. If you want to be more sure, you can repeat the algorithm with another value of a's. At least 3 or 4 iterations of algorithms are needed to be 100% sure that the number is prime. And the algorithm, if the number is not prime, then the algorithm will be deterministic. That means it will say that the number is composite. So to summarize this module, we started discussion with the requirement or necessity of the random numbers in cryptography. Then we looked at what are the properties that should be satisfied when we generate random numbers. The third, we discussed the different random number generators, touching upon the pseudo random number generator and true random number generator. We said the pseudo random number generator has a fixed equation to generate the values. In the true random number generator, the source is a random source, saying that we can have our heartbeats as an input which follows every time. It is not a constant pattern, but it may be a varying pattern. So always a random input would be fed in that case of true random number generators. Then we went ahead to look at the Fermat's theorem, and then we look ahead with the we went ahead by taking a look at the Euler's theorem. Then I in the detailed discussed the Miller-Rabin algorithm, which is used for the primality testing. Thank you.